Welcome to Creating Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Paige. This is an inspirational podcast where guests come on and share their real life stories. They discuss their struggles, hardships, and traumas. They also discuss how those encounters have helped them change, grow, and the healing process they've experienced. They share where they are today in hopes of helping someone else who could be going through the same or similar situations. So join me as we inspire others weekly to become the best versions of themselves. Hey y'all, welcome into another episode of Creating Yourself podcast with me, your host Paige. Today I have on Dillion. He is a leadership and personal development coach, a prior athlete, and his business is called Elite Leadership Solutions. Hey Dillion, how are you?
Paige, I'm amazing. I'm honored to be here. How are you?
Good. I'm so good. I'm honored to have you on. I know we were talking a little bit before and, just everything that you have accomplished so far. So I'm really excited to hear your full story and what all it entails. So whenever you are ready, I will let you just go ahead and get started. Tell us where you're from and everything.
All right. The background, the story, the testimony, I'll definitely share. Born and raised in North Alabama, a place called Huntsville. So that's the roots. I want to kind of like we were mentioning earlier, just kind of give the high level framework. But basketball background, played middle school, played middle school, high school, all the way through. I got a scholarship to play in college, and then also played overseas in New Zealand and Puerto Rico. So that's a little bit of flying through that background. But I think more than anything, like when I went from ball to business, that was a huge identity shift for me. Going from a professional basketball player to not really knowing what to do with my life, right? Such a structure and everything that I had. So I think from that, got into the real world, got a job, got married to my bride, been married almost 7 years. I think just through that journey of career and calling and that adventure, it's been amazing. It's just been a grind, and I've had to be relentless. That's one of the things, one of my core values. I think just going through that, I had, the mental health shift and change was a huge challenge that I went through out of basketball. Went through multiple sales roles, multiple different roles, not just sales, probably had 7 jobs in about a span of 2 or 3 years, gained probably 70 pounds, had a huge adverse season. And then, came across a sales role that was a great fit for me. I went to a conference. The conference was erupted and kind of gave me the catalyst to passion and energy and personal development and sales and fueling my flame. And when I came home from that conference, it really accelerated my career. Started making 6 figures, got in, to more the personal development side to grow my craft and my skill set, and got into leadership development. My degree is exercise science, so I wanted to. I thought I wanted to be like a basketball coach, but also my own academy and do personal training, skill training, as well as life coaching for athletes. But after that conference, that's when I really got into the business side of things and had a heart for that and being a business coach. So about 4 years into sales, that's when I started to launch ELS, Elite Leadership Solutions, and happy to go into that as well. But just basically the story is transition from ball to business, and in that transition when the ball ran out of air, it was holy smokes, who is Dillion? And how to recreate that, all being birthed with a basketball in my hand. So that's what I kind of just say, the high level view.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of athletes have that trouble transitioning from athlete to career. Once you put down whatever sport you choose, you seem to hear, especially professional athletes, once they retire or they don't go pro that they wanted to, they don't get that level of pro that they wanted to. You hear the the documentaries say they had trouble finding themselves and who they were after that. So I
Yep.
feel like that's very common.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of like you go down one path the whole time, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's just say you're focused on biceps for half your life, and then you transition to legs. It's like a whole new muscle, really.
Mm-hmm.
You go from school to, athletics, basically, being a student athlete, you go from class to film to whatever it may be, and everything's so structured. And so I feel like for other athletes, when the ball does run out of air or whatever it may be, like, you have to create your own framework. You have to find your coach or mentor. You have to find like your new community and your new your new identity, and what that day to day looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge heart of mine for personal development coaching, is like helping people find that rhythm, and that to not to create a rut, but create a rhythm through their day to day, and create flow and growth.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you see that a lot in athletes. It's like, ball or whatever sport they chose was their life. So it's like, where do I go
Yeah,
now? Who am I after that? So I feel like that's very common
exactly.
for them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and
talk to
mental
us
health,
once
right,
you
is a huge.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's it. I was just going to say that the mental health was a huge component of that, right? On the
Mm-hmm.
identity piece, and like, it's like that imposter syndrome and just things like that, getting into a new path. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talk to us about the mental health aspect of it, because I feel like that's something that's just not talked about enough.
yeah, yeah, I'm totally open with this. So had a mental health diagnosis coming out of college. Had a clinical depression, and it was a long series. I mean, it's been about 7 years of a journey of anxiety, depression, and the challenge in that, even one specific moment, like just like the point of like almost committing suicide, and like that deep dark state was so, you're just so lost, right? And you're just like, you don't know which way is up, and you're like, what's the point? What's the why? And if you can't find that
Mm-hmm.
why, it's like, why? What's the point? So for me, it was, I had like an experience post college, and it was like, it just really rocked my world. Like, I literally got engaged the same day I graduated college, and then all the same day, right? I basically created a
Yeah.
career, or needed a career, and then also needed to support my future wife in 6 months. And so that
Mm-hmm.
6 months of engagement was just crazy. And so that whole like series of change and cycle and stuff, just caused a chaos and anxiety, and that spiraled into the depression. So I keep saying this, but like in that season, there was one particular moment where I was I was really sick, but I was also depressed, and my parents took me to this Doc in the Box, and they gave me like a steroid to help me, like, tell my with my sickness, like my actual cold or whatever, and it
Mm-hmm.
interacted with my medicine that I was on for depression, and it like took me even deeper into depression. And so,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, it was like really, really, like, it was out of my control. Like, I was like, what in the world is going on? And so I spent some time in the mental hospital, which is a whole experience. Like, if we were really talking deep and real, like, sitting there with people who have one guy tried to drink bleach to end his life. Like,
Oh.
one guy had a scar around his neck to, end his life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, so you go from basketball, playing professional basketball, to this identity of like being in a mental hospital. It's like, what in the world?
Yeah.
So I think through that, it's also a journey of like coming out of that. So, getting back into the health, getting back into, the gym, now that I'm not burnt out of it, and, now to 240 or so. So definitely shed off 60 pounds and back on my way. But I think that was one of the darkest moments of the life. And, it's just a continual journey, but it's definitely more of a healing journey, and better, and more light to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of gotten more wanting to research and look into like men's mental health, just because I feel like it's so not put down, but like it's just not talked about enough. And I know it's a thing of like men just don't like to talk about their feelings and that sort of thing, but I feel like we as a society and a nation and a community, like we need to create this safe space for them to be able to talk about it. And I feel like having these sort of conversations and creating podcasts where men feel like they can come on and talk openly about their own experiences and things they've been through and not be so shunned for it or put down for it or made fun of for it. I feel like it's something that we have to do more and more, because if we lose too many too often, the numbers are just so high. It's like the astronomical number is crazy. And it's because they just feel like they have nobody to talk to, and it's so scary, and I just, here lately, it's just something I've been really drawn to want to like do more to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, and I appreciate you sharing. It's definitely something that needs to be an open space, an open forum, like just creating that space, that safe space to share, and not even really to fix it, but just sometimes just to vent or get it off your chest,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I've tried to create a space for in my coaching. And I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, but I truly do have a heart to listen and to hear. And for someone just to be heard, and that changes their life, just getting it off of them, that weight, and they see freedom. Like, that's worth every minute of me listening to a 45-minute spiel or whatever it is,
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I've dealt with some things recently in my personal life with the person that I'm with, and it's just like I want him to be more open to just tell me what's going on, because he keeps everything so deep inside. And I'm like, I don't care what it is. Like, I've been through so much, and I've healed so much of myself through things, and from things. And I'm like, listen, I don't care what it is. Just tell me, like just to get it off of you, I feel like would be so helpful. And I feel like there needs to be so much more opportunity for men to have that safe space.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for a minute, it was a challenge for me just to articulate it, right? Like, I was fine with sharing it. I just didn't know how to get it from my heart to my head to my mouth, and so that challenge of really being able to articulate it and putting words and feelings and like emotions behind it, I was able to express myself and be able to communicate like, hey, this is how you can help me. And it took a lot of my wife just studying me and understanding me more than I know myself. So that's another component. But I think like just like being able to like encouraging you, Paige, for your for him, and just like listening and truly creating that open space and just saying like, hey, share what's on your heart, like what's heavy on your heart. Like, that's a great question. I enjoy asking and kind of creating that space. But it's tough.
It is. It's hard, especially when they like are just not known for communicating. It's like, it's literally like pulling teeth. It's like, come on, I know it's in there. Just tell me. So
it's in there somewhere. That's right.
Yeah, it is. It's hard, but so talk to us about kind of how you got into, where you really pulled the leadership and personal development, like coaching from, like where, you talked about going to this the I forgot what you called it now, that you went to and came home from, and was like,
Conference?
this is what I wanted. Yeah, the conference. Sorry. After that, kind of what led you to that point?
Yeah, so this is a pivotal moment in my life, and I kind of want to go more into detail on that story, because it was
sure.
It was unbelievable what happened. But so I mentioned the depressive season. I mentioned gaining the weight, living in the backyard of my mother-in-law's house. I mean, we had probably $400 in rent, expenses, everything, and we couldn't even pay that to my mother-in-law. And that season of just like living in their backyard, like the challenge, and barely having a job that I could keep, and my wife at the time didn't have the highest paying job, so just trying to make it happen, make ends meet. And I get offered the opportunity to go to this conference, and my buddy's like, hey, I'll take your ticket, you just got to go from Florida to New Orleans. It was about a 3-hour drive. My wife's from the northeast not like the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go on that trip, and I go on that trip. And as I'm driving there, my wife and I were just talking on the phone, like, hey, like this, just make this. Be frugal on this trip, like don't spend a ton of money, whatever. And we just don't have it. And so I was like, well, like, where are we at? Like, well, we have $200 in the bank account. I was like, you're letting me go on this trip with $200 in the bank? Like, what? And she's like, no, I trust you. I'm in your corner. Like, I feel like you're supposed to go to this event. I had peace on it. So I now know I have $200 in the bank. I'm like, all right, like, how are we gonna make this happen? So I get there, and the hotel that they have reserved for me, they paid for my ticket, but didn't tell me they had the hotel reserved for me. And it was at a Marriott. It was $200 to stay there. So I'm like,
oh God.
So there goes my whole paycheck, my whole life savings into this thing. And from there, the conference started. I'm just on faith now. Conference started. There's a ton of people in personal development. I was never really introduced to the whole world, people, just motivational speaking and mindset and, real estate investing and like all these different components, writing a book, like just so foreign to me being an athlete. And so this guy goes up, his name is Coach Michael Burt. He's a former coach, women's championship coach, turned into a business coach. And he goes up and he's like, hey, my name's Coach Michael Burt, and everyone needs a coach in life. I was like, that's what I want to do, and that's my guy to help me get there, And then I just, in my heart, I just felt like this calling to say, hey, you went pro in business. You went pro in basketball. It's time to go pro in business. And so I signed up for his mentorship. Obviously, I didn't have anything in the bank, but I was like, hey, I want to do this. I just don't know how I'm paying for it, but I'm signing up. It ended up being like $1,000 over, span over like the whole year, which was crazy. Just the thing we were challenged to pay that. But the whole thing I just want to wrap up with this event was I was leaving the event super fired up, signed up for the mentorship, and I'm like, well, how in the world am I getting home? So I call my wife. I'm like almost in tears. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. This guy taps me on the shoulder and he says, hey, I want to bless you with this. Hands me a $20 bill, and it's just enough gas money to get home. And so from then on, like everything kind of accelerated in my life. I came across this 6-figure job. A guy, messaged me on Instagram. He's my close friend now. He was starting a sales team, of like 5 reps, and now they're up to like 50 reps. But it was like that whole journey of like just timing and everything. So that goes to show just the timing and obedience. And that's really where my personal development journey of like diving in all that stuff really was birthed. And of course, like now I'm like, I've probably studied under, there's a guy named John Maxwell. Are you familiar with him at all?
Oh, no.
So he's like a big leadership expert basically. And so he has a lot of like principles on leadership and personal development. So I started studying him for like 7 years, up until today really, and learned a lot of leadership stuff. He was one of my biggest mentors, still is. I mean, he's written like 80 books on leadership. So definitely check him out for those listening.
Yeah, for sure.
Interested in that. He's kind of the godfather of leadership. So that's that. But I think the other component, like I was mentioning in my story, is like I had an exercise science degree and a minor in business. So I knew I wanted to develop people, but I thought it was athletes, and now it's business owners. So now I'm going back into my sales professional, my previous self, and like, hey, this is the person I should be impacting the most. And I went to this indifferent conference for a day, and I'll just say this, like basically I went to see Ed Milet speak for a day. I flew from Scottsdale, Arizona to LA for that full day literally. And then Milet comes up on stage and speaks, and he's like, hey, the person that you need to impact the most is your previous self before breakthrough. The person you need to impact the most is your previous self before breakthrough.
Yeah. That's like very
and
like,
so he
wow.
said that, and I was like, my mind was blown. Yeah. And so I was like, holy smokes, like that's who I'm writing my book for. That's who I'm doing my content for. That's who I'm doing my podcast for. That's the person I'm reaching, because we all have a story, right? And ultimately it's history. But we're rewriting it into the format of where we want to be, not who we used to be.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's one reason I started this podcast was, I've been through domestic abuse and I've dealt with that, and he was an addict and those sort of things, and so I've been through a lot of shit, and
Yeah.
I just, I'm almost it's 5.5, almost 6 years out of that relationship at this point, and I've done
Mm.
so much of my own like healing work and growing from that and learning from that. And I found myself in this really deep dark depression about a year and a half ago, and it was, let's see, I started the podcast in April of last year, so it's a little over a year old, and I finally got to this point where I was talking to one of my other friends who also has a podcast, and I was like, I've always wanted to start one, I just don't know what I would talk about. And I started to
Mm.
see that like people related to my story of domestic abuse on TikTok. I had started talking about it on there a little
Wow.
bit, and I was just like, I feel like if I can help other people share their story, to know that someone else can relate to their story so that they're not alone, then it's like this domino
Yeah.
effect of those sort of things. And so that's kind of
That's
been what
right.
it has been so far. And it's like knowing, even though you've been through these struggles and hardships and traumas and like all these really horrible things in life, it doesn't define who you are. It makes you look at your life
Yeah.
and recreate yourself or create yourself altogether. Like you've never really created yourself at all. And that's where the name came from, creating
Mm.
yourself. And it's just been,
Yeah.
and now that I have like my life coach certification, I'm kind of going to like branch off of that as well, because with life coaching, you're essentially creating yourself. So it's kind of the same concept.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I think that,
you
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna say, like, it's so cool to hear you say that because, like, you're creating your business, which, I think Jay-Z or whoever said that he's like, I'm a business man instead of a businessman. So it's like your business is you, and so you're getting to recreate yourself as you build your business,
Mm-hmm.
and you're getting to help others recreate their selves through your business. It's a platform, and
Yeah.
it's your voice, and it's your voice of influence, and it's just simply your story.
Yeah, and I love to tell people like your past doesn't define you at all. It creates who you are. And that's so like it's so true.
Yeah,
It took me a long time to learn that though.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
But
like, I
well,
don't want other people to
yeah,
feel like it takes them as long as it took me to figure it out. Like I want to help them figure out a lot sooner that, your past does not define who you
mhm,
are. It literally creates the person you are.
yeah. That's beautiful. I say it like this: it's your past doesn't define you; it fuels you. Your past doesn't define you, or it's not who you were. It's the person that you're trying to become, that you're speaking to them and encouraging them along the journey to become
Mhm.
that new version of yourself.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's super. It's fueling your past is fueling you towards your future,
Mhm.
um, and continuing to grow along the journey.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. And I've noticed too in doing this that a lot of the people that I have on and that I talk to is, these people have been through some of the worst things of their entire life, but it has turned them
Mm.
around and it has caused them to create their own businesses of and
Yeah,
9 times out of 10 these businesses are helping other people. It's not like, they're not out here like doing a business of, I can't even really think right now, but like it's a business where they're giving back, they're helping others. It's not just like their
yeah,
own gratification where the business is all about them and they're making money off of, you know, selling things or whatever. It's literally a business of giving back and
yeah,
helping people. And it's like the people who've been through the worst are the ones with the biggest hearts and the ones that just want to help other people.
yeah. Come on, come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you had mentioned before we started recording the 5 F's that you
Yeah.
talk about. So talk about that with us.
Yeah, a super simple framework. It's just kind of the 5 categories that I think are most valued and most important to me, and what's helped me on my journey of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So my tagline is "Let's grow." Right? If we're not growing, people like to say "Let's go." Right? It's like, all right,
Yeah.
well, I get that, but where are we going? So it's like, all right, let's grow. We're always continuing to go up, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think like that these 5 components, these 5 F's are the key components to just growth in general, and the personal growth and personal development. So their faith, family, fitness, finances, and fuel. And fuel is the most, not the most, but it's very important, like to dial that in. It's basically the activities, the hobbies, the things that fuel you will fuel the other 4, and they'll fuel you into fulfillment, and they'll bring fun, they'll bring flavor, they'll bring life and joy to your life, because you're operating out of that fuel, and creating time and space for those. And you and I kind of talked previously before we connected, or before this podcast, and it's like, the faith component scares some people, and it's like, we're on a different journey, and I think
Mm-hmm.
like for me being a coach, like I'm here to guide you along your journey and be a voice and a help and assist and hold you accountable, and help you take action. So what I do with all my F's is it's basically starting from a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at now in this F, and where do you want to be? What's a 10 out of 10 look like for you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
10 out of 10 for you may be I am statements, breath work, meditation, journaling, whatever it may be, on a spiritual aspect. Or, for me or someone maybe on the Christian side of things, like it could be, reading the Bible, prayer, or you may be in between. You're like, hey, I kind of want to try this like faith out, and and
Right.
I want to give it a shot, like really grow. And you make that decision, and then it's like, it's kind of navigating through that spiritual path and journey that we're all each on. So I give that kind of option and an opportunity for people just to find out and discover, hey, this is where I want to be, and then help you get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important too. What you talked about with faith is like, everybody has a different outlook on it. And I think that's really important to figure out with, like, especially your clients and things like that. I grew up in church. I talked about that before. I grew up in church. I went to church every Sunday with my grandparents and my uncle. And I'm not going to be like, oh, I don't believe in God. That's not my thing. I'm just not one who is like, puts my whole heart and my whole belief system in that. I'm more of someone who is like, I'm a journaler, or I put my belief in, I journal this, I meditate, like, I don't want to say I like meditate on it, but like I kind of manifest it in a certain way. But I don't sit and read the
Yep.
Bible every Sunday, or I don't sit and pray. My way of praying is listening to soft, calm music while I journal, and I put my thoughts and what I want and, those sort of things down on paper. And for me, that is more like, that helps me connect more than, sitting and like praying and reading the Bible. And for some people, that's just what it is. And I think that's really important for everyone to understand, is like, different people have different ways of looking at it. But your way is your way, and my way is my way. And I don't like, if that's how you work, that's how you work. Cool. I don't care. It doesn't affect how I view you as a person. And I think that's what a lot of people have struggles with, or, I see so many people like conflict over those sort of things. And I'm like, I don't care what you do behind your closed doors, as long as you're not hurting someone or abusing someone, or like, you know, whatever. If you want to sit and read the Bible, that's cool. If I want to sit and journal, that's also cool. We can still be friends, Like,
Mhm.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
That's right. That's right. It's going back to impact, which you're mentioning there, of like how we use our businesses for the good.
mm-hmm,
We're creating impact, right, through our stories,
mm-hmm,
and that doesn't generate income, but I think like that's the heart behind it, and so the heart is to love and to serve,
mm-hmm,
which can tie into faith. On the Christian side, it can tie into other religions, or it can just tie for you loving and serving yourself and overflowing into others.
right.
And so, like we're saying, it's your own journey. But I think like one of my famous quotes and favorite quotes, one of my favorite quotes that I love, not a famous quote of mine, but it's Gandhi says, "Be the change you want to see in the world."
Yeah.
And so that's just like something I try to live by, and just kind of serve through. But it still goes back to that core of loving and serving.
Yeah. Yeah. I've doing this podcast too has really opened up my perspective on a lot of different things in the world and how I view things. And it's given me, I feel like, a lot more empathy and sympathy towards, different things and people in general. That 2 years ago, I would have, been like, whatever. And now, I sit and I'm like, I can have a lot more empathy about that situation. Or, I had one girl on who used to be an addict and she's 6 years into recovery, probably 7 at this point now, but, it's been so long since I've had her on. We still talk every now and then. I'm friends with her on Facebook now. And I'll message her every now and then, hey, how are you? How have things been? How are you doing? And we talk and, whatever. But it's like her journey and how she talked to me about drug addiction completely changed my entire perspective on it. 110% how I viewed drug addiction completely. And I would have never expected anybody to change my perspective on that. So it's not only like helped me help others, it's changed me in a lot of ways, and so I want to be that change for somebody else. And I think that's essentially what it's all about.
Yeah, be the change you want to see in the world, right? So
yeah, exactly.
That's exactly right. You mentioned that you touched on it a couple of times, but perspective, right? When our perspective shifts, we can see it through the same lens, not a different lens.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been wild to like look at myself 2 years ago versus now, like how different I actually am on things,
Yeah. Yeah, it's empathy, right? You're able to empathize with that person that you're listening to and supporting and loving through it. And it's a team effort now when you see it from the same side of the table and you're like, hey, let's go through this together. And that's simply a coach. But again, it's not like, hey, this is what you need to do. It's like, hey, tell me what you want to accomplish and I'll help you get there and grow through it. Not just go through it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a whole different perspective. Yeah, it's completely this. Yeah. So talk to us about your business, Elite Leadership Solutions, how you started that and where that's at today.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's kind of the background obviously is basketball. So, a lot of leadership principles even throughout playing ball. The exercise science degree minor in business. So I knew I wanted to train and develop people, turn into developing business owners after, 7 years of sales. And, now I have this like community and platform really of people who just want to grow and want to develop, and they're leading their life, anywhere from leading their life to leading their family, to leading businesses, to leading thousands, hundreds of thousands, influencers, whatever it may be. Right. So it's like just being that elite version of yourself so that you can overflow into the people around you. And so I create, this framework of, people before you, behind you, and around you. So, always having that kind of that position of like, hey, who's got my back? Who am I? Who's following me, right? And who I'm leading and guiding, but then who am I following to make sure I'm in alignment with continuing to grow forward and having that direction and guidance myself, and then the people around me, my community, and my environment is always important to just be to have in place. That's you always hear like the average of the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time around is going to be who you become, right?
Yeah.
So just being conscious of that and creating a community centered around like-minded people that we can grow and sharpen each other. So that's the community aspect. I do like a 16-week kind of program. Are you familiar with 75 Hard, like through Andy Frisella? Have you heard of that?
No.
No. So yeah, it's basically like a personal development like challenge. So you do like you'll do like 45 minutes exercise a day. You'll do a gallon of water a day, or 3 liters, whatever it is, your water intake, your diet, and then you'll do read 10 chapters of a book. Different like doing different objectives like each day for 75 days straight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty intense. But I've kind of created something like it's a 16. I call it the 16-week elite. But it's basically for 16 weeks. Each week we do something that's kind of an uncomfortable task for us that we wouldn't normally do, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like I have the 4 categories: faith, family, fitness, finances, and fuel. Fuel is the fifth one, right? So it incorporates into the other 4.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 4 weeks, and then on the 4th week of the month, we basically would do a fuel activity that like sparks that grows that's you know fueling that particular app. So 16. I'm not trying to overcomplicate it. I just want to make sure it's clear, but it's
Yeah.
continued to grow and develop. But I think like that 16-week process helps you get uncomfortable in the 4 different areas of life, and then also be
Mm-hmm.
fueled in those areas towards fulfillment, towards growth, towards joy. And when we're uncomfortable, that's always going to produce the most growth. And
Yeah.
out of our comfort zone is birth that that exponential growth. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I had a girl on here who was a mindset coach, and she talked about stuff like that. She does this like 12-week program with her stuff, and she was like, my main thing that I tell people is journal. You have to journal every day. And I was like, but what do you talk like? What do you journal about? It's so hard. Like I've tried it before so many times, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what do I talk about every day? Like just my day-to-day life, or like like what do I journal about? And she was like, just things that are on your mind. Like, you
Yeah.
have to take those things that are spinning in your mind and get them out of there. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll try. And
Yeah.
I can't do it every day. It's just something that is not in my
Sure.
mindset. It's just too hard. And so I feel like every other day is a lot easier for me, because I feel like if I have to do it every single day, it feels like a task. And then I don't want to do it. So I
Sure.
feel like every other
I get
day
that.
is
Yeah.
easier for
Yeah.
me. Because then it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if I'm told to do it, I don't want to do it. So if it's like you do it every day, I don't want to do it every day. So if I do it every other, it's like I can handle that.
Yeah.
But it's really helped, and I feel like it's made things easier. And I try to journal, and I'm just like, all right, I sit down and I'm like, what am I going to write about? And sometimes it just comes out, and other times I sit there for a few minutes, and it's like, I don't know what am I supposed to talk about, but it's gotten easier. And she was like, that is one of my main things that people say helps them more than anything is journaling. And I'm like, it has really helped. So I can see that.
Yeah, it's cool you say that because I'm actually creating a gratitude high performance journal, so you can kind of
Mm-hmm.
track your growth. You can track, your what you're grateful for. Also, journaling those thoughts out more. So it's like writing 3 things you're grateful for down, writing 1 thing you learned that day, and then 1 intention and what you're looking forward to the next day. And so like that's a cool way to like be able to articulate it and simplify it at the same time, to where you're kind of creating this rhythm around it. But I'm with you. Like it does take a lot of work to do it daily. So
Mm-hmm.
um, trying to simplify it and nail it down to where you're creating a rhythm, whether it's once a day, once a week, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I've kind of started out nice, like once a week for 16 weeks, doing something different that's uncomfortable and produces that growth weekly. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I feel like sometimes it's just when it's daily, it almost feels like a chore, and then I don't want to do it. It's hard.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's where you don't want it to end up and turn into. So good awareness for you to try to like balance that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like that's something when I start like creating stuff for my own, coaching stuff, I don't want to push that up on people, because I'm like, if it doesn't work for me, I mean, granted, not everything that works
Yeah,
for me is going to work for other people and vice versa, but it's like, I want to make sure, listen, if it feels like a chore to you, then don't do it. Let's try to figure something else out, because that's my biggest thing. If it feels like a chore, I'm not going to do it.
yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely right.
Mhm. Yeah. So, you talked about the athlete and your leadership and personal development, and then your own business. How has
Yeah.
all of that and going through all of that affected your personal relationships?
Yeah. Great question. I feel like my personal relationships have flourished, honestly. because I've been able to be a better version of myself. I've been able to be more present. I've created a lifestyle where there's more freedom,
Mm-hmm.
more capacity mentally for me to be able to spend time and be present with those around me. So
Mm-hmm.
I really love what I do, and there's another component to what I do is like I do like leadership development and coaching for sales teams. So I do like culture sessions and like growth with the whole team as well. So that's kind of how I operate on a one-on-one basis and a group side of things. But I think like with those relationships, like even developing that with teams, like I'm creating relationships and friendships even with the people I'm coaching and teaching, and we're all growing together. It's a really beautiful thing. But yeah, normally people say like when you start on a new venture, or you start a new business, or like you lose priorities, and that's why I really try to lean into that so much, is because I want to practice what I preach, right? I want to be
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled. I want to have joy, and I want to be in alignment with where I'm headed. And so that's what I've created, is like this alignment and fulfillment on the day to day, and teach people that it's possible too. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important. I feel like so many people now are trying to find something that's not so corporate and so 9 to 5, and,
Sure.
because it doesn't give you the time that you need with your family and friends, and to have a real life. I've been out of work now for 6 months, and trying to do these different things to build something up and just create an income. I don't ever want to go back to like corporate world and work those 8 to 5, 9 to 6s, because it's like I have so much more time for myself and my kids and my life. And it's just like, when you get into this mindset of creating your own like work schedule and things like that, it's like going back to anything else is like almost scary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a new perspective, and when you get a glimpse of it, it's like you start valuing family, friends, like
Mm-hmm.
all those relationships more. Um, and life is short, so it's like you don't want to spend 80% of your life in a building and cooped up in there, and it's just not for everyone, and especially the creatives like us that want to really
Mm-hmm.
use our skill sets to create business, to create impact, and know there's something more. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely hard because I don't want to, and I feel like when you do that, you end up around people that you really don't like want to be around either, because they're
It's
not like
environment,
you.
right? Environment is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yep. Yeah,
yeah, the
exactly.
environment's not always fun. So, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, listen, I've really appreciated you coming on and sharing your story. I think what you're doing is incredible. I think what you've been through, and being open and honest to share your story is amazing as well.
Yeah, Paige, it's been my pleasure. I call my kind of like phrase, my mission statement is empower, equip, and affirm. Right? I empower you for what I see inside of you. I equip you from, how I get from point A to point B, and then I affirm you
Mm-hmm.
and hold you accountable through the process.
Right.
So I want to empower you by saying thank you for creating such a space of vulnerability, for creating a space for people to share, for people to be able to share what's on their heart, to impact those people that were their previous self before breakthrough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And without you doing this and being obedient in it, it wouldn't exist, and I wouldn't be on here. I wouldn't hopefully be able to impact, the people that are listening, and just this post on social media, whatever it is, and be able to talk about mental health, and hopefully some dudes out there that want to grow and develop and be a better version of themselves and create discipline. Like, I think that's where it starts, is taking action. So well done.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Tell everybody where they can find you if they want to reach out to you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, pretty much the best way is through Instagram. It's at Dillion Pollard _ DILLONPOLLARD _ That's got my link tree on it. It has 4 previous podcasts I've done before. It's got my LinkedIn, all that good stuff. And then I'm creating a school account, which is basically a community. It's a paid community, but it's a community of people who want to grow and develop and hold each other accountable and just grow through the 5Fs and other things. So that's going to be on my Instagram as well, newly developing that. So it's a great way to connect with my ecosystem and just grow around like-minded people.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we will look forward to connecting in the future.
Awesome, Paige. As always, let's grow.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure you hit the follow button on whatever listening platform you are using, and head over to my social media pages and give me a follow there as well. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok at Creating Yourself Pod. And if you have a story you would like to share on this podcast, email me at creatingyourselfpod@gmail.com, or you can message me on any of my social media pages. Make sure and come back next Tuesday for a brand new episode. Hope you guys have a great week. Bye.